Since the beginning of time, many groups of people have faced unjust and prejudicial treatment and have had to rise up to fight for their rights. Throughout history, women and girls alike have faced discrimination based on their gender and the assumption of their physical and cognitive abilities. Margaret Atwood's novel, The Handmaid's Tale, perfectly demonstrates the atrocious discrimination women can face. Atwood told The Guardian, "When it first came out, it was viewed as being far-fetched. However, when I wrote it, I was making sure I wasn't putting anything into it that humans had not already done somewhere at some time." When looking at past and even present-day discrimination, it is obvious that Atwood does not lie about the inspiration for her novel. Women have faced and still face discrimination in their everyday lives, just for being women. Although discrimination against women is a very broad topic, and The Handmaid's Tale shows this very well, restriction on women's education is an important element embodied in the novel and in our history and current-day events. Since education for women has always been one of the most important aspects of female empowerment, it is an area that shows a very clear example of the discrimination women suffer. Now, the idea of education dates as far back as 100 AD. For example, in the ancient Greek province of Sparta, both women and men were allowed basic education. According to texts from the 7th and 8th centuries, India allowed women to travel to universities and study. However, although education became important, it was not usually considered for women. Any education that women could receive would be in social roles and correct behavior in order to make them good family assets and wives. During medieval Europe, most women were barred from getting an education because they were having children, unless they decided to enter a convent and become a nun, which was the easiest way a woman could go to school. Then, in the 19th century, women's education grew more popular and the very first female school of Girton College at Cambridge was founded. The 18th and 19th century also saw the rise of activism for women's rights, and many women were arguing for education on grounds for female empowerment. For example, first-wave American feminist Elizabeth Cady Stanton argued that men deny women the facilities for obtaining a thorough education as a way to control them, which inspired many to fight for equal rights. And America was not the only place that saw people advocating for equal rights to study. In fact, Russia was one of the world's most advanced places for women's education, where women were allowed university training and medical courses. Activists in India argued for women's schooling with the idea that it would make women better at traditional roles as well. In the 20th century and after World War II, women's courses finally adapted from vocational to just educational, and female college enrollment spiked in the 60s and 70s due to the influence of second-wave feminism. Female education became more widely accepted and highly educated women entered the workforce, but there were still many roadblocks, especially for women of color. For example, Yale University began admitting women to its graduate school in 1892, but the first African-American woman, Jane Bolin, to receive her degree from Yale Law only graduated in 1931. She then also became the first African-American woman to join the New York City Bar Association and the first African-American woman to serve as a judge in the United States. But despite the progress in women's education, and that the right to an education on the basis of non-discrimination is recognized under the human rights law, women and girls around the world still face discrimination when it comes to education, especially in underdeveloped countries. Between 1970 and 1992, girls' enrollment in developing countries rose from 38% to 68%, but in the least developed countries, enrollment rates for girls still are only 40% at primary school and 12% at secondary. These girls face barriers such as poverty, gender stereotypes, such as the view that women are domestic homemakers and caregivers, as well as child marriage, early and untended pregnancy, gender-based violence, and lack of a quality and inclusive learning environment. Although most girls who are not given easy access to education want to go to school, they are prohibited by their country's leaders. For example, when the Taliban took over Pakistan, girls were prevented from going to school and many were shut down. Before this ruling, Swat Valley in Pakistan was the capital of education for the country, with law schools, nursing schools, and even informal beauty schools. But school administrators have had to close over 900 private schools in fear of attacks. Between 2009 and 2014, there have been attacks on schools in at least 70 countries, according to a 2015 United Nations report. 100 of these schools in Pakistan have been torched, and as many campaign against female education under the rule of the Taliban, other schools face violent threats. As an example, campaigners send messages called night letters, which are written threats placed outside of schools, en route to the school, or outside of teachers' homes. They warn the community not to send their daughters to school and call on them to close all schools. When not followed, as seen in 2012, these threats lead to violent acts like poisoning 150 girls in a girls' high school, just for seeking an education. However, as they've always done in history, women are standing up for their rights. When the Taliban invaded her home of Swat Valley and shut down girls' schools, 11-year-old Malala Yousafzai joined a local press club to protest the school closings. She gave her first speech called "How Dare the Taliban Take Away My Basic Right to Education," which was publicized throughout Pakistan. Seen as a threat to the Taliban, the 14-year-old activist was shot in the head by a Taliban gunman while she was on the bus ride home from school in 2012. Malala survived the attack, and the incident caused protest all over the world, and in December of the same year, the Pakistani president announced a $10 million education fund in Yousafzai's honor. Now, Malala Yousafzai is a 20-year-old published author, UN Human Rights Prize winner, Nobel Peace Prize winner, and founder of the Malala Fund, which supports girls' education all around the world. When asked to speak about her activism, Malala told UN News,
"So going through all this situation in my life, I have learned that now surviving that attack, this life is for a purpose, and that is for the education of children. So it's only 70, 80 years that we live for, and why not live it for a good purpose? Why not live it for a service that can help humanity, that can help the world? So I want to help as many girls as I can to make sure that they get quality education and achieve their dreams."
Activists like Malala see the benefit and importance of girls' education because it allows women a basic human right and enables them to make genuine choices over the lives they lead. With women's education, the literacy rate increases and pushes forward the development in struggling countries. Since many uneducated women are vulnerable to human trafficking, educating young girls and providing them with opportunities and fundamental skills can fight this horrible industry. With education, women are more likely to have a later marriage, as 1 in 3 girls now are married before they are 18 in underdeveloped countries, and their children are twice as likely to survive past the age of 5. Education will also reduce poverty. When women are provided with equal rights and access to education, they participate in business and economic activity, which increases earning power and income that battles current and future poverty. Overall, education for women is a basic human right that has been denied to many women over the years and is still denied to girls today. But it is no doubt that women and their allies have carved a path to a better education for women to provide them with equal opportunities and empowerment. There is still a way to go for women's education, but as President Obama told the United Nations General Assembly in 2012, the future must not belong to those who bully women. It must be shaped by girls who go to school and those who stand for a world where our daughters can live their dreams just like our sons. And hopefully someday, that will be reality.